think we all were doing the same
I was jamming.
thing of just bobbing heads to that
I
song.
love the intro.
Yeah, that's the OG intro. All right.
Well,
I think we're live, right?
yeah, it looks like we are. We are live.
Awesome. All right. I think we're going to take just a little bit to make sure folks are able to get in before we officially kick things off. But welcome, everyone who's already here.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Super excited to be doing this and wrap up the year, so to speak, with a pretty fun show.
I'm particularly excited. I haven't actually been on an Ionic show in probably, years. Probably like 3 or 4 years, right? I feel like it's been a while since I've been on one.
You know, to
Yeah,
pull back the curtains a little bit, I was going through like YouTube to check out just to make sure everything was like set up correctly, and I found Ionic show, the first one from our current office, and it was like the Songster app one, and there was this one moment I was like, wow, that's 8 years ago, but it was Max was just going through the app playing a lot of music, and then all of a sudden, Ben, you were just like, can we stay on track here? It was just funny to see how everything has evolved a bit.
Wow, that was forever. Songster. Wow, that brings me back.
Yeah, there was one where we had released Ionic Framework version 2, or the beta for it, and Max was reading some forum post reactions and reviews, and he started reading one. This is such a funny memory, and it started out great, and then he hadn't read it beforehand, and then it just took like a nosedive and went into all the things that this person was upset about with V2, Ionic V2. It was really funny.
Those were the days.
Yeah.
We're a little bit more polished these days.
We are more polished, and we're much more remote. Although I'm happy about that, because now we can have on more different guests, not just limited to the folks who are in the Madison office, which is where I am at right now. But of course, Mike, you're all the way over on the East Coast, and Max, you're at your home. So this is the world we live in. I think we probably have enough people to get today's show started. I see here in the thread.
So we got Bruce Lane coming in from France, I believe.
Ooh, nice.
I'm gonna butcher that pronunciation.
Ken. Yeah.
But then we got Denmark. That one I can handle. Yeah, awesome. We got a whole bunch of folks coming in. Paraguay, Brussels, and from Turkey.
Love it. Well, why don't we kick things off? Are you all ready? We can get into things. All right. Well, welcome everyone again. Now that there's more folks here, to this is the last Ionic show of 2022. So we figured, we would do a little recap of everything that has gone on this past year. Talk a little bit about some of the big highlights, the big things that have happened at Ionic. Talk about what we expect going into 2023. Maybe tease and preview some stuff that we're going to be working on and releasing, and then we're going to have a Q&A. And actually, we have a special guest who's going to join us later today, who is PJ Patrick Jean, the CTO at OutSystems, the company that recently acquired Ionic. So we'll bring him on a little bit later, and we're going to talk about the Ionic OutSystems acquisition a little bit later, because it's a pretty big topic, a lot of meat there. So we'll get to that a little bit later. So we figured, why don't we just kick things off and talk about what Ionic has been up to this past year. And so I figured there's no better place to start on an Ionic show specifically than talking about our community. And maybe we can spend a little time giving everyone a recap of how things went this year. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So as everyone knows, like, community is super important to us, and it's just like the heart and soul of everything that Ionic's been able to achieve. So without you all, I don't think we'd we'd be here. But we've done a whole bunch of work this year just to kind of meet the community where they're at. We recently started off with a new Ionic Discord, which I know so many people were excited about.
That thing's been growing like crazy.
Yeah, it's up to like 5,000 active users right now. It's one of the things that I will go on the record saying I was not on board with the Discord, but I am very happy to be proven wrong.
I had to sway you, Mike. I had to convince you. I remember there was lots of gentle pushing that, hey, this might be a good idea.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm okay being proven wrong because I love that, like, from the Discord, we've been able to like help so many more people and like have that quick action where, it kind of fixed a lot of the problems that I think a lot of us were feeling with the Slack that we had before. Discord is just far, far better than Slack is for communities like ours. And from that, we were able to like highlight key players who were, super active in helping people, folks that we already kind of knew were going to be doing that. And we were able to take that small group of folks and start off this little insiders program, which has since evolved into the Ionic developer experts. So without Discord, I don't think we would have had a good starting point for IDEs. So yeah, glad to know that Discord actually brought us something good.
Yeah, it really puts the Slack to shame.
I know I sound like I'm, just super against Discord, but I am very excited that Discord has been doing well. And, our community manager, Michael's been keeping an eye on things, making sure it's growing healthily, has a lot of good processes in place to make sure that we're not getting a lot of spammers, we're not getting, junk and a lot of noise. We're fostering a good growing community. But yeah, it's just been great to see like some of our community members, go beyond just interacting and actually contributing back into framework. I think we've had this year in particular, I think we've noticed a big increase in like community contributions getting into our newer releases. So very excited to see all of that.
Yeah, the developer experts program, by the way, just as an aside, I feel like, Mike, we have been talking about doing this for so long. I think I found an email from like 2017 that I sent to you saying, hey, we should have like an MVP program or something. And you were like, yeah, why don't I start doing some research? And, 5 years later, we finally, 4 or 5 years later, figured out how to make that work.
Yeah, but better late than never.
I agree. Same with the Discord, and that's been a big win as well for the community. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we're up to like 40 folks in the IDE program, and people doing blog posts, people writing their own open source code and contributing it back to the community, and people who are just educators, speakers, bloggers, people who are out there trying to spread the word of Ionic and doing my job for me.
Yeah, it's been awesome. By the way, if anyone's listening and they want to check out the IDE program at Ionic, or maybe they want to become a member, I'm pretty sure you can do that from our community page. We have some links on there, the Ionic community page, which is just ionic.io/community. So we would love to have you join if you're in the community, if you're developing Ionic apps, if you want to get more involved. That is definitely a great way to. Obviously, the Discord is another great way to get involved. So, thank you. There's a little link.
There we go. Already got that. Like I planned that.
So that's been awesome to see. How's Framework doing? Why don't we talk about Framework?
So did you know, I pulled this number down like 20 minutes before this. We've done over 60 releases of Framework v6 this year.
That's insane.
Wow. That's probably like a new record.
Yeah, I think that probably is.
It's It's ridiculous. I didn't think we'd have that many. It doesn't feel like we've had that many, but I think it's going to show like the framework teams hit like a really nice stride where they are constantly shipping things out and having a consistent release schedule. That way they can get fixes faster and have a better experience using framework. Like today we did 6.4, which includes a bunch of awesome features, and most of the features in this one are actually from the community. So tying it back to the community stuff, the community created a brand new minor release. So thank you, community folks. Really pushing framework to a new major version, which who knows? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. That's awesome.
Yeah, framework, has been doing great. I feel like I said earlier, the team has been reaching a really good point where they can iterate on features super fast without having to jump through hoops to get things done. Like date time, for a great example, was something that we were able to iterate over super, super quick between 6.1, 6.2, and 3 without breaking anything, which I don't know if we could have done that before. So, kudos to the framework team for getting all that work done.
Definitely. They've been on a tear. Did we link to, I think there's a 6.4 blog out as well from Liam, which has some of the updates on the latest changes or improvements.
There is.
By the way, while you're grabbing that, I should also mention we have a new blog. We've been wanting to build, design, and release a new blog for a long time. And we finally got to do that this fall. So we've consolidated a lot of disparate blogs that were existing in all the various different projects of ours, websites of ours. We felt it would be a better experience for everyone, also easier for us, by the way, as an added benefit, to have everything in one place. So if you want to check out all the different framework releases, or at least blog posts about them, or stencil, capacitor, AppFlow, whatever, all of the various stuff that we have going on here, it's all on our new blog, which is just ionic.io/blog. And you can kind of drill down into different products. I just had to say something because I mentioned blog, and that's been a big project, and finally got that out there. We're really proud of it.
It's also nice to be able to see more than one blog post above the fold at any given time, which is, from my perspective, that is awesome to know that it's like, hey, we can see 4 or 5 of them in a single viewport. How great is that?
It's wonderful. So yeah, so check that out. It's been a big year for the framework team. They have been absolutely killing it. And I would definitely try out the latest version. All right. I'm trying to be mindful of time here. I want to make sure we have time at the end to have a good Q&A. So I'm going to keep moving us along because there's a lot of updates. There's a lot of things that have happened this past year. So why don't we shift gears to capacitor?
Yes.
And talk about some of the changes, updates, etc. that we saw this past year there.
Yeah, so earlier this year, I believe was capacitor 3 earlier this year? No, that was late last year.
Capacitor 4 was this
Capacitor
year.
4 was this year. I thought we got 2 majors in 1 year, but time,
Yeah,
what
I
does
think
it
that
mean
was
anymore?
end of last year.
What is time? But capacitor 4, yeah, we did a new major version this year. I think a lot of the motivation behind this was just to support some of the new Google Play Store policies, but we were able to get a lot of work in there that sets us up for the next major version of capacitor. I think a lot of folks know that we have been working to support both capacitor and Cordova projects or Cordova plugins. We've decided to try to work in a way where we can make it so it's capacitor first, and Cordova integration can be something that you opt into if you need it. we've also gone through and created a dedicated Google Maps plugin, which if you were around in the very early days of Capacitor, you know
That one,
how popular of a request that was.
yes.
I think that was the thing for us where everyone was like, "Yeah, Capacitor is cool, but you have a Google Maps plugin."
Cannot tell
and
you how often we heard that, which is understandable. But that was
it's
like
a
the big holdup with Capacitor was Google Maps.
and it's a cool plugin, right? We finally have been able to ship our own Google Maps plugin. Has a lot of great integration with like the native scroll support. So as you're, scrolling inside of your app, the Google Maps, which is a native component, and then your Ionic app can, or your Capacitor app can feel like they're in the same context. We actually have a really cool blog post from one of the developers of the Google Maps plugin on how they were able to get that working. Definitely a really nice deep dive if you want to check that out. In addition to that, we also got like the HTTP plugin and cookies plugin, which can't say enough how great that is. Unlike the previous HTTP plugin that we've had before, where you had to add that into your project, this is just enabled by default. And the way it works is like it kind of patches some of the underlying network requests, so that way, if you're using, say, Axios or Angular's HTTP client, all those requests are going to get patched and go ahead and use the native network layer of iOS or Android. So that way you don't have to deal with a bunch of CORS issues, which are always just a pain to deal with.
I think next to Google Maps, that was also one of the big requests from the community. So we're trying to stack rank these in order of people's feedback and requests. But that was a big one. That one is. I'm so happy we have that out.
And it
Major
makes
props to the
so
Cap
much
team.
sense. Like I know for a long time I would just say, "Oh, why don't you just fix the CORS issue?" But there are some cases where that's not possible. So it's like good to know that, hey, we have another solution for you, and it's like just enable this value in your config and you're already using it. So it's pretty easy to enable that in your project without breaking things.
Totally.
And then, as we have been authoring Capacitor 4 and figuring out the plugin story there and getting all of our stuff up to date, we have this really cool community project that I want to highlight from our very own IDE, Masahiko, who has brought in this whole entire project to help people migrate their Capacitor plugins from V3 to V4. Max, you said you've tried this out and it was like
I just
super
used
easy
it.
process.
So yeah, Capacitor's we've got a tool to help you migrate apps between 3 and 4, but not plugins. And so our dear friend Masahiko built this really great tool that does that for plugins. So I just went through and updated a plugin I was working on, and I ran this single command, and it updated a bunch of stuff, and it worked perfectly. And the thing is, like, this is more than just like moving between major versions of Capacitor. It's also moving to new versions of iOS and Android libraries and dependencies, right? So some of this stuff is stuff you just have to do every year if you want to stay up to date with what's happening in iOS and Android land. And so this tool helps you do that for plugins. So definitely check that out if you're a plugin author.
Yeah, and Max, you mentioned the migrate command that we've added for Capacitor apps, and that was something that I was fully prepared to going into a migration to do some of those manual changes, to know that I could just do like cap migrate and it automatically migrates all of our apps. So if you're on Capacitor 3 and you have not updated to Capacitor 4, we have a migrate command, which makes that so easy for you. In fact, we've taken that migrate command and we've built it into some other toolings as well,
which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I just want to give a shout out to the Capacitor team. They've put a ton of time into basically automating those updates. And I know native updates, they're never fun. And like I said, a lot of the blame goes to iOS and Android because they change things every year, and you need to stay up to date in mobile, right? You can't let projects get old, otherwise you run into issues building and publishing to the app stores, etc. So the team really put in a lot of effort building some awesome tooling to help you stay up to date and update Capacitor, but also native iOS and Android changes.
Absolutely. These teams have been on a tear this year. So we mentioned a tool. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about closing out capacitor updates before we shift gears to this said tool that Max was alluding to?
Yes. Another great, you know, I guess change in mentality is how we build out the plugins. We, as a lot of folks know, we have a collection of native solutions that we offer. One of them being Auth Connect, which helps you integrate authentication services in a secure manner. We have decided to go back and like rethink how we offer and author these plugins. So that way we have like Auth Connect being a capacitor plugin first, but if you're inside, say, for instance, in a Cordova project, you still want to use like Auth Connect, there should be a pretty easy way to do that without jumping through hoops. And this kind of goes back to that migrate that strategy of support capacitor first and then support older Cordova projects. So Auth Connect, the version that is going to support this I don't believe is ready just yet, but should be ready soon. So be on the lookout for that. If you're using Auth Connect right now, it's about to get a whole lot better, and your integration is going to be capacitor first.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we move on?
Let's do it.
So the other thing we want to talk about today is the VS Code extension that Ionic team member Damien has been running. And this is a fantastic tool that recently just surpassed 86,000 installs, 5-star rating. People love it. And I would just appeal to the whole community. If you haven't tried this yet, you need to try it. It's not, I know some people want to stay with the command line tooling and all that stuff, which is great. I'm that kind of person too. I get it. But the extension came from all the work. Damien spends a lot of time with our biggest enterprise customers. And so what he's basically done with this tool is taken all the issues, all the challenges that people run into when they build JavaScript projects in general, but also Ionic and Capacitor projects, and turn it into tooling that basically makes your life so much easier in a million small ways that you really need to use it if you haven't. So let me give you some examples. He just rolled out 2 updates that will help you manage dependencies. One will help you find updates. So if there's like small updates for different dependencies in your project, you can run this tool. It will help you find dependencies that you need to update. But it'll go a step further and help you identify security vulnerabilities in those dependencies. As we all know, things happen in the Node ecosystem. Occasionally, there are security issues with dependencies, third-party dependencies. And so having that information directly in your tool while you're developing is really, really critical. There are other small things too, some quality of life things, like if you're an Angular developer, it looks like he just rolled out a feature to help you make sure you're on the new AOT compilation strategy with Angular apps. And so there's a lot of little things like that, like making sure that you're not falling behind or your project's incorrectly configured. And again, he takes that experience from working directly with enterprise customers and putting that into tooling, because part of this is also to make our customer successes life easier. Working with customers is just having automated solutions to common problems. But the benefit is this is useful for every Ionic developer. We've also integrated the migration tool for Capacitor 4, so you can run a single command in Visual Studio Code, VS Code, and go through and do the migration. So a lot of little things like that. And then recently we added this awesome embedded preview in the editor that will let you run your app in an embedded phone frame, but much less painfully than in Chrome or or what have you in the browser where you're doing the device emulation. It'll run right in VS Code, and you can toggle the different device screens,
I love that.
rotate them, all this stuff. So that's a huge feature. And I think, even though this tool has 86,000 installs, it's still relatively unused in the community. And so we just, every time we get a chance to tell people, like, you need to check this out, because it definitely is one of the best things the best like improvement to your workflow as an Ionic developer that we've ever done. So check it out. Huge shout out to Damien. He's been doing like awesome, consistent updates on it. It gets a lot of love. So, yeah, that's the VS Code extension, and I think we could drop a link to it. Yeah, we have already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, massive
So-
props to Damien. It's just been a huge hit, and it's a fantastic tool. If you're an Ionic developer, you got to use it. At least you got to try it.
So for like 86,000 installs right now, here's hoping after this show's done, we bump up to 87. Is it bold to just hope that we get to 90,000 by the end of the month?
I don't know.
think
I
it's-
haven't been tracking the rate very closely, but
I know when at the beginning of the month I checked, it was at 80,000.
Wow.
And then last week we were at 85,000. So I don't think another 4,000-5,000 is too much.
I'd buy
think
that,
people
Mike.
will do that.
I buy that.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. All right. I think so. Thank you for those updates. I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the other things that have happened this year at Ionic. And again, I'm just trying to be mindful of time, so we have time for Q&A. I'll say a few words on AppFlow, which we haven't talked about that. And for those of you who don't know, AppFlow is our mobile CI/CD cloud tool for building, managing, live deploying your apps to the app stores. AppFlow has seen a lot of updates this past year as well. In particular, build stack updates that allow all the users on AppFlow to keep up to date with the iOS App Store, Google Play Store requirements and changes. The team has rolled out a bunch of new UI and UX features as we have sort of been steadily building out our design system for our cloud dashboard, which if you didn't see, we actually published a blog post. When was that, guys? Like a month ago on some of the new UI improvements that we rolled out to the tool. So if you haven't used it in a while, if you haven't logged in, definitely check it out. We're continuing to improve the general just experience, the UI, the speed. So that's been awesome. The two big things, though, that we should mention about AppFlow that happened this year. One is, and this is really recent, very exciting. We just got SOC 2 Type 1 compliance for AppFlow, which is huge. The team has been working really, really hard on this for a very long time. And it's been something we've wanted to do for a while, and we finally got it done. So that's a big win for AppFlow, and especially for those enterprise customers who are more security conscious and need those assurances. So AppFlow is SOC 2 Type 1 compliant now. So that's really exciting. And we're heading towards Type 2. That's our next goal. And then the other big update to AppFlow, which I'm not sure how many people saw or maybe you missed, is we rolled out support for React Native builds in AppFlow, which is a big step for us. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, more from like a higher level perspective and how we're seeing Ionic, the company and the business, continue to evolve. But that was a big release for AppFlow in sort of our quest for just supporting all platforms and becoming more agnostic. Because developers have their preferences. And like Mike said at the beginning of the show, we want to meet them where they are, whether they're building with Ionic tools, Ionic frameworks, technologies, or with technologies like React Native, which is also a great option. So that was a big release for AppFlow. If you missed that, I think we also had a blog post announcing that. I don't know if you have that or not, Mike, but we should throw that up. And then Portals. Portals has been another, I think, surprise hit this past year at Ionic, which we really just released it about a little over a year ago. I was just looking back, which is insane, the amount of growth that we've seen on Portals. Max.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we should say what Portals is.
Agreed.
So Portals basically lets you embed web experiences into any native app. That's kind of the simple explanation of what it is. Under the hood, it uses our many years of hard work and experience deploying web apps to mobile, which we've done with Capacitor and all this other tooling we built. So Portals takes that but makes it more focused on that embed use case, and it's focused on companies that are trying to basically move faster and ship mobile apps more frequently and do it by enabling multiple teams to contribute to a single app. I think historically, all of us in the cross-platform space, we know the argument like, building a native app means having to rewrite every feature, and now you have to do it for every platform, et cetera. And I think we're all here building cross-platform apps because we know that that just doesn't make any economic sense, right? Most companies just can't afford to do that. And big companies have a different problem. They have so many features they need to ship. They have so many apps they need to build, and so it really doesn't make sense for them. And so what they're doing, and what we kind of see this trend emerging very intensely, is they're trying to keep a native app shell or a capacitor app shell, whatever, built by a single team, and then have all these other teams that are already building web apps here and there, or different features for the web, enable them to actually ship features in the mobile app using micro front ends with portals. So it's kind of like a twist on our bread and butter, which is deploying web apps to mobile. Now we're doing it in this more traditional native development context with portals. And so the product has taken off because there's just this right place, right time thing happening in the market where a lot of big companies are just coming to the conclusion that they have to take this micro front end approach to mobile if they're actually going to get anything shipped. And that's why we built portals. And so because it needs to work in any native app, we added React Native support. There's support for traditional iOS and Android apps. We're going to be adding support for Flutter as we hear requests for it. So
Possibly.
possibly we'll
No
see it.
promises.
I think traditional native and React Native are the core focus right now. But really, it should work in any kind of mobile app team or environment. That's the goal.
Totally. Yeah, that's been a really, really fun project to see grow and solve that pain point. And actually, we should mention on the topic of micro front ends for mobile, we are hosting a summit in January called Micro Front End Summit, aptly named, where we're going to be bringing on different guests from the micro front ends ecosystem and world, and also some experts from Ionic team and from the Portals team to talk on all things micro front ends. And so we're very excited about this. The team has been working very hard planning this, getting speakers lined up, making sure our topics that we'll be going over are on point and helpful. And so if you haven't heard of it and you're interested in portals or micro front ends in general, you should definitely check it out. It's going to be all online, and we're going to have a lot of great people there. Okay, real quick before we shift gears into talking about what's next, we have a new open source project that we released this year.
Yeah.
Called Trapeze. So
yeah, almost forgot about that.
Yeah, why don't we say a couple words on Trapeze? I assume it'll come up a little bit later anyway in terms of what's next. But Max, this is sort of one of your you've been spending a lot of time on this particular project.
Yeah,
so
I'll try to go quickly. So
yeah,
a lot of what we do here is just based on what people ask us for, right? We try to solve real customer problems, and Trapeze came out of a lot of teams coming to us and basically saying, I've got this app that I'm putting in a CI/CD workflow, or maybe in app flow. I'm doing regular builds, and I need to make changes to the app regularly. I need to increment the version number. I need to swap out settings for dev, prod, test builds. I need to install plugins and configure the app after the plugin installs, right? And to do that requires all this really hard native iOS and Android knowledge and file modifications, right? Like go modify this Gradle file, go modify this Gradle file, go inject some XML into this file or change some attributes. There's all these things. There's all these different file formats. So Trapeze is a tool that it abstracts away native iOS and Android projects into a single YAML file where you can just work in this YAML file, set the configuration options for your native project across iOS and Android, run a command, and it will go and do the updates. And it's actually really powerful in the sense that with Gradle, it will actually go and parse the Gradle file and build up an abstract syntax tree so that it's making safe modifications to your Gradle file. It takes that approach across the whole thing. Like the philosophy with this project is that it's never going to break your code. It's never going to break your project. It's always going to make safe engineering quality source code modifications to your project. But ultimately, it just enables you to have that kind of like configuration workflow that's really important for CI/CD, for white labeled apps, etc. So it's called Trapeze. We just rolled out the first like production ready version this fall. I'm actually working on a blog post right now about kind of the actual formal launch because I realized we never did that. Yeah, check it out. Trapeze.dev. Yeah.
Yeah.
Already got the link in there.
Very excited about this one. All right. I think that can cap off. I'm capping us off so we don't go.
So I just saw a chat. He said he's been working on this for the last 2 months for React Native. Trapeze supports traditional iOS, Android, React Native, Flutter, Capacitor, and we're looking at native script and maybe Cordova as well. So it's agnostic to the native framework under the hood.
Yeah, again, pattern matching our desire to build tooling that meets you where you are and doesn't force you as much as can be down one way or the other, depending on what you prefer to build with. All right, let's shift gears. I'm getting nervous about the time, so why don't we talk a little bit about what's next, and then I want to mention I think us three should talk a little bit briefly before Q&A about the big elephant in the room in terms of updates at Ionic this past year, which is the acquisition. But before we do that, what can we expect going into 2023? Mike, I'm going to put you in the hot seat on maybe you can give us a preview of some of the stuff that's in flight.
Sure. So yeah, like the first thing that I would expect to see is a new version of Stencil. I know a lot of people have been asking, "Oh, what's going on with Stencil? Is it still a project?" Yes, we've gone through like this huge, I would say, rebuild of what Stencil is and how we think of the project, and a lot of that is going to become pretty evident in Stencil 3. We have an early alpha out right now, so if you are somebody who loves the bleeding edge, feel free to try it out. And we have a migration guide on the Stencil docs, but I would expect to see Stencil 3, final availability on early 2023. Let's not put a date on it.
I thought you were going to give us a date. I was like, wow, he's really going to go for it.
ETA? Question mark.
ETA soon.gif.
All right. There you have it, folks.
You've heard it here first.
What else, Mike? What are some nuggets you can give us?
I would generally just say, expect to see more out of the teams. I think with the acquisition, we're pretty excited to be able to grow our open source contributions and our open source teams. I was on a stream with Simon Grimm the other day, and he didn't realize that how small of our teams are actually. He thought we had 30 people working on Framework and Stencil. It's 5 to 6 people working on both projects, and they're able to put out a whole lot of material, frequent updates, over 50 framework updates, and a new Stencil version. I think going into 23, expect to see more people on the Ionic team working on Framework and working on Stencil and just crushing issues and pull requests left and right.
Maybe we can top our release record we made in 2022 next year.
Let's go for 100 releases.
The team, I'm sure, will love hearing that, Mike.
Yeah. I'll make it an OKR for them.
I think it's also okay. So one other thing I want to mention, and then I'll let you all throw out whatever is in your minds. AppFlow. Back to the, I mentioned we released React Native support in AppFlow. Of course, we also have support for Ionic apps, Capacitor, etc. One of the things I think you can expect in 2023 for AppFlow will be support for pure native builds, cloud builds in AppFlow. So we're going to be expanding outside of even just React Native, and allowing you to build Swift apps in AppFlow and Kotlin apps, all obviously in the cloud environment. You can automate all of it just like you would any other app in AppFlow as it exists today. So teams are working on that. That's also an exciting bit of what's next info I feel like comfortable sharing. So we're very excited about that. I think with the time left, maybe we can just address the OutSystems acquisition of Ionic. Just between us three, it's been about a month or so, a little over a month since we publicly announced the joining of the companies. And now that some of the dust has settled and we've all had some time to reflect, I thought maybe it would be nice for us to talk a little bit about what we think it means for us. And maybe we can go around the room. I'll just say so okay, let me just back up. When we started this company, Max and I started this company, we were not building Ionic framework. That was not something that we were working on. We actually were building we were building WYSIWYG tools for building mobile apps. We had a project called Codica, which many people maybe haven't heard of. Maybe some of you have. I know, Mike, you maybe remember that.
I remember that.
But it was a drag and drop app building tool that would allow you to visually drag in buttons and tab bars and segment controls and everything you might need to build a mobile app. And you did it all visually, and it would spit out a jQuery mobile app at the end. We ultimately created Ionic in part because of that, but that's a separate story for a separate Ionic show. But our roots, the point of this is to say that our roots are in very much so what I guess today would be called low code. It's where we started things. It's kind of in our DNA. And so I think it was very fitting when we started having conversations with the OutSystems team and talking about how our visions overlapped so much and how we could sort of bring things together and build something even better together. And I think it's just worth pointing out that for those of you who don't know, it's very much something that we're passionate about. We started there. And I will just say one last thing before I stop talking and I can hand the mic over. As far as to the community, I would say I really cannot emphasize enough how little I think things will change in any sort of major way, one way or the other, except for positive stuff. Like Mike mentioned, an increased investment in open source and the ability for us to be enabled to continue to build out our vision of just solving pains and building apps using web technologies and doing it for web developers. And the pairing of these two companies is going to enable us to do that even better. And so outside of that, I don't think anyone needs to expect anything crazy they need to look out for or be worried about. The reality is that I think very little will change from the Ionic side.
And I'll add, one of the things that's so exciting about this is both of our companies are in the business of helping teams build software. And now, operating as a standalone startup is a very complex, difficult thing to do. I think joining forces with OutSystems gives the company much more stability, not operating as a small startup in, what is looking like some difficult economic times. And we're focused together on making software development better. We're kind of aligned on that same thing. I see a lot of other startups get acquired by companies where there's no overlap in what they do, right? And this is not the case at all. We're aligned on that same mission, that same goal. And the OutSystems team loves the community that's formed around this technology, loves the open source part of what we built, along with all the other things too. And that's why we are continuing to and will increase investment in the open source stack, because it's so valuable. It's so important to the combined kind of long-term goal here.
Well said.
Yeah,
Mike, anything from you?
I don't think I can top anything that Max just said. I'm just excited to see, with this, what else can we do and how far can we take what we've built up over these past almost 10 years, feels like. What's the next 10 years going to look like, and how far can we go? I'm super excited.
Totally. Likewise. All right, we're doing great on time.
We nailed
I have
that.
to
45
say,
minutes.
Yeah.
On point.
So why don't we kick things off into Q&A, and we can bring on our special guest.
Drum roll,
PJ.
everyone.
All right, PJ, welcome.
Thank you. You guys landed that like right on 45 minutes. I am so impressed.
That's never happened and will never happen again.
That is
I take
something.
full credit for that, so thank you.
Yeah,
PJ.
yeah. Thanks for
So-
having me.
I think, Ben, this just means you need to MC all the events going forward.
Was that
I'm
right?
done. Yep.
I don't know, Mike. I don't have the mic beard or the microphone that deepens my voice like you do. You're
Yeah,
much better.
that is like impressive facial hair. I got to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is awesome.
A lot of neglect.
All right, so PJ, I'm putting you in the hot seat to kick things off for the Q&A. I'm going to ask you, what excites you most about the future of Ionic?
Maybe he should just introduce himself quickly.
Well, sure. PJ, why don't you introduce yourself first?
I'm PJ. I'm the CTO of OutSystem. So a little bit about me. Been doing development since I was this geek kid of like 12 years old, the family computer. The whole career started in university on this like crazy idea of being in physics. So I got a physics degree, but couldn't seem to get away from development. And so I just stay with development the whole time, and physics is kind of the background. So I read stuff about physics ever so often and wonder what could have been, but that's okay. I'm very happy with where I'm at right now. And then getting to your question of like what excites me about the future, it's really, I guess it's really a continuation of the past of Ionic. And I think how, one of you mentioned as far as earlier, you're solving problems for developers, like really hard problems for developers in a unique way. You're also solving problems for companies that hire developers and use developers and, letting them build teams of people from different backgrounds where it's been very hard to do. And so, just that aspect of, I think Max kind of mentioned about we're going to the same, it's like we're going to the same destination. We're just coming at it from different locations. And it really is just making developers' lives better and what they do without making them change who they are. I think that's the biggest thing. And from being in this space for so many years, it's like you go through these technology changes and you have to it's like you have to change your identity, like something like, it's like you have to change your religion, type thing. It's just this hard thing that we put developers through to do more awesome stuff and build more awesome apps. And you guys are doing it in a way that's unique where you're not putting all that pain on developers to just keep being more awesome, And so for me, what is the future? What excites me about that is what you've been doing. And then now, like you mentioned, as far as stable, it's really hard to build a company. I mean, you guys have done an amazing job building this company over the last, 10 plus years of stabilizing that, where it's like, okay, let's continue that open source, investment. Let's continue building that community. Now you're set on this solid foundation to just keep doing more, just keep being more awesome. So.
Yeah. And I totally agree too about, so I think some people have wondered, like, does this mean everyone's going to be doing low code? And the way I've always looked at it is there are different ways of building software for different types of people and different backgrounds, but the end goal is you're shipping software. And so combining the two companies means the surface area of the ways to build software are now fully mapped. You have both. And historically it was either or, right? And so being able to have the choice of building the way you want to build, that's what I love about this. And that's what I think, the community and both of our customers will see kind of a lot of amplification from.
Yeah, I might kind of mention it, as far as like some of the interesting things now that can be done, right? And it's like, okay, you're stable, you keep doing what you've been doing, but when you look at the low code tools of, which I hate that term low code, by the way, and anybody that heard me talk, I just hate it. It's just, it's almost a derogatory term, and there are reasons that it has manifested to that term. But it really, to me, is just like it's solving some hard problems in a different way. Like you say, WYSIWYG, if you want to think of it that way. What some people don't know about OutSystems is a big piece of the solution is the almost immediate app hosting. So it's okay. You can be a creator, you can design beautiful experiences on the front end, But then, all that back end stuff that some don't want to get into, just being able to click a button and all of a sudden the whole back end app hosting, transactional database, API surface layer, all the technology stack that's required to do that. If you don't have to focus on that as a developer and it's just there, I mean, that's actually a part of a low code some low code platforms. Our low code on the OutSystem side, low code platform has that. And so thinking of a future where you start combining these things together, where you don't have to be like a low code developer, quote unquote, but hey, I want to get that app hosting like real fast and put my mobile front. I'm a web developer building a mobile app. And now I've got this back end, as far as system, just with the click of a button, those types of that. I mean, that's cool, right? That's the type of stuff that really gets exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Totally. Good answers. Good answer, PJ.
Every once in a while I get things right. Not exactly on a 45-minute type thing, but every once in a while.
All right. We have a couple questions come in. I'm trying to decide which one I want to float. Mike, is there any specific that you want to take? Otherwise I can throw some out.
Let's see.
I could answer the capacitor name one.
Yeah. How did we name capacitor? I was thinking about
that. Go look at the logo. And if you do any electronics work, the symbol for capacitor is like this. It's
like two vertical lines and then two horizontal lines kind of stemming out from the
other. With a gap in the middle.
Take the capacitor logo and shift it 45 degrees and you'll deconstruct my brilliant design wisdom and philosophy into where the logo came from.
So if you think about it and you kind of channeled the phone gap energy, the history there, it's like capacitors, that layer in the middle between native and web that helps you kind of communicate back and forth. So I really just liked the icon, first of all, the symbol, and then we worked backwards from there. I mean, that's all it was. There was nothing more. We almost called it avocado because it was like a play on Cordova, but that would have been fun. But
the project name that never will be.
There's many of those. Good answer, Max. I had forgotten a lot of that. Here's one for PJ. Is OutSystem a headless CMS system?
No, we're not CMS. So it's there's some good CMS tools out there, and that's an interesting thing. That was actually when I first got to OutSystems. I was wondering, does OutSystems play in that space? And it's not. I mean, there's obviously some overlap in the solutions that get generated, from a significant amount of web content, if you want to think of it that way. But it's definitely from the developer side. Most of the people that use OutSystems are developers. And we'll have people that come from the .NET world, the Java world, as far as moving over. And so we're not really a headless CMS system. You think about it, it is absolutely that WYSIWYG designer. You can generate content very fast. You've got the UI, you've got process, you've got database, but then the ability to just spit out that back end like I talk about, in there. And so we don't see customers really use us in that way, from that. And it's just a different space for sure. So.
Really good one from our old pal Thomas. How do we envision OutSystems and Ionic helping each other?
You want me to take that?
Yeah,
go for it.
All right, I'll jump on it.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, no, I mean we talked about when we were all dating, as far as 6 to 9 months ago, and started. Which, by the way, for the community, it was interesting, right? So we started talking about how we could leverage, the tools of Ionic to make OutSystems better, and then it just kept progressing. Of wow, this is really cool. We're trying to solve the same problems from a different point of view, like I mentioned, and then it was like maybe we can join forces and even do more. And then that's what, that question there really encompasses is the ability now for us to solve problems that kind of, if you think about it coming from the OutSystem side, we have some things that can help us on the Ionic side with roadmap items that we want to do. And then the same thing on the Ionic side, we can help OutSystems for roadmap items that they want to do. I mean, once again, app hosting, don't want to project as far as too much on product roadmap yet, but the ability to just build out a back end app hosting, very fast, if you're starting from Ionic toolset, going in and injecting things such as stencil and design systems and capabilities and how we actually build components or widgets on the OutSystems side, leveraging, portals. I mean, I'm a huge fan. This one of the things that really got me excited too on learning about portals. We didn't know anything about portals when we first started talking, and then what you're doing there and introducing that into market. And so looking at how you can take this, that, if anything blows away the concept of low code, that does. If you think about the ability to go build these, these native apps, mobile apps, and you're a web developer, you got a bunch of web content, and then pulling in, some of the OutSystems capabilities on that into it. And it's like, well, all we really want is an awesome app at the end of the day with people that have the skills to do it. Well, let's help them by giving them tools that light up their existing skills. And so the thing that excites me really on that is that, that's how I see us helping each other as separate entities. It's I think there was probably a significant amount of questions about, hey, what does that mean for Ionic? Like I've said multiple times, to me, Ionic now is just it's a well-funded startup now. You want to think of it that way. So you're not as, kind of like, okay, well, we got to, look at the every month, as far as the stability of a startup. It's like, okay, now you're a well-funded startup. Keep being a well-funded startup. And so that's, to me, it's like how each company helps each other as their own entities, helping each other with their roadmaps that we can really look at and be complementary on, the two sides.
So I think that answers this second question. Are we changing the name?
I was just going.
Hell no. Don't do that.
I got a really comfortable hoodie, and those are very hard to come by, and it has Ionic printed on it. I do not want to get a new one.
Yeah, no, we love the 47 logos that we've seen.
Oh, no, don't start. Don't even start. All right.
There was one other question where I know we're running short on time. I did want to answer it because we get it a lot. So on the VS Code extension, will there be one for WebStorm or whatever? And the answer is no. And what I want to explain to people is that so much work goes into one code base for VS Code and integrating with their extension system that we just cannot bring that to other IDEs. And so what I would recommend, because I know people want to use other IDEs, is just keep a VS Code instance with the extension running in tandem with your WebStorm or whatever IDE, and use it as think of it as like a graphical CLI tool, like a GUI for the Ionic CLI, the capacitor CLI, if you want to think about it that way. And then anytime it changes the files in your project, WebStorm should update. It should be fine. So I'd recommend that use case, but the answer is no, we're not going to bring it to other IDEs, at least not anytime soon.
Speak for yourself. I will do the work for the Vim plugin.
Unless Mike does the work for the Vim plugin,
man.
which would be awesome.
For the 10 people that still use Vim.
I still use the spirit of Vim inside of other tools.
I know.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Mike, do you want to pick one out?
Oh boy.
I see one in particular that I know is radioactive.
Is it the one that came in before?
Well, maybe the Svelte one.
Svelte one is the yeah.
Yeah. So do we have time? Do we have plans for Ionic Svelte? Officially, probably not. Unofficially, we have a community member who's been working super hard on getting an Ionic Svelte story started. Believe their name is Tom on the forum. It's a very, very awesome name. But they've been doing a whole bunch of work to get a Svelte integration with the what was it called, Svelte Kit, their whole platform for like a file-based router system. If I can find a link for it in the few seconds we have. Otherwise, check out on our Twitter. We definitely have promoted it recently. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think that's as far as we're going to get for now in like official capacity. But it is something that we are watching. And there's a Discord channel for it now. Thank you, Shane. So check out the Discord, join the Discord, and join the Svelte community channel.
Good answer. All right. Well, I have been informed that I can see we're at time, but also Max pointed out at the beginning of this show before we hit record that there's a World Cup game going on. So we really don't want to keep anyone past this time. I just want to quickly thank PJ for joining us for his first ever Ionic show, and thank all the other people, Mike, Max, and everyone else who joined us. Thank you for joining. This has been really fun. It's been years since I got to get on here and hang out and chat with all of you. So thank you all for joining. And we're going to wrap things up, and we'll see you in 2023.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
rest of the year.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.